talking about where the pot doesn't exist. It's not yet been brought about, right? So how can you have arising, lasting destruction for something that doesn't exist yet? Well, that's kind of sensible, really. You wouldn't expect to be talking about, conditioned thing that doesn't yet exist. We want to talk about a conditioned thing that does exist, surely. But it's you've got to pick your way through. And he says the arising of a pot, the lasting of a pot, and the destruction of a pot are spoken of. But without that pot having been brought about, what would that arising, lasting, or destruction be a characteristic of? Yes, but any objection to that, Yair? Do you see any point there? That's
sorry, no objection.
No objection.
No.
Well, what about the arising of the pot? Doesn't the arising of the pot take place before pot exists?
Yes, but this is what it said. No, I didn't really get this paragraph. What it means.
You noticed you had a doubt about that, did you, or a query in your mind?
If each one acts singly, individually?
Well, it seems to be saying that, without pot having been brought about, how can you have the arising of the pot? But the arising of the pot does exist before the pot exists, doesn't it? Do you think so?
That in the process of arising, pot is not existing yet.
Yeah, so you have the arising of the pot before the pot exactly there.
Yeah.
So this is that's a bit of a puzzle if you are just taking it, let's say, just without thinking about the, the position of the lower schools versus the position of the higher school. So, so that's a bit of a query. So like I was asking earlier this morning, if pot doesn't exist, how can it arise? And then how can it perform the function of arising? What's doing the function of arising? If pot doesn't exist, and yet the arising is taking place like at the time of the cause of pot, is pot performing the function of arising when it doesn't exist? Anyway, I'd be inclined to say, well, the arising of pot does take place before pot exists, but here he's trying to say that it's as if there's no pot. Without the pot having been brought about, what would the arising, lasting, and destruction be a characteristic of? So there is a difference between our own school and the lower schools here, which is going to be become debate sort of later on in the text. So maybe I won't say anything about it now, but keep thinking about that. You've got to get used to the idea that pot, the time it's arising, doesn't exist. So how can you say pot's arising? But that's exactly what people do say. If you take your son to see somebody making a pot on a wheel, like there's an experienced potter there, they've got the clay in their hands, they throw the clay on the wheel, they put a load of water on, and then the wheel is turning, so they're making a pot. But the young kid has never seen that before, so the kid asks his father, well, what's going on, what's happening? So you see, she's making a pot, there's a pot arising here, maybe they wouldn't use the word arising, but there's a pot being produced, There's a pot arising. It would be like, that's an accurate sort of statement that a worldly person who doesn't know anything about philosophy, but they know a bit about making pots. So there's a pot arising now. She's making a pot. But how can the pot be doing the arising? How can the pot be forming the function when it doesn't exist? So this is a question to be answered. You know, if the pot is arising by its own power, you know, if the pot's arising from its own side, this is those exactly the terms that we use when we're talking about inherent existence. That's the object of negation. So that's the thing that the consequentialist schools getting right and those lower schools are getting wrong. They want to say everything does inherently exist. So they want to say, yeah, things do exist from their own side. Things do exist by their own power. But how can pot be arising by its own power if it hasn't got any power, if it doesn't exist? So you can see when that guy is taking his child to see a pot being made, it's not like there's a pot really there arising from its own side, is it? So what's happening, you know? So please think about that. You know, when Budapalita is saying, but there's without the pot having been brought about, what would that arising, lasting, or destruction be a characteristic of? So there, Tenzin Palmo, Anila, do you think Budapalita is speaking from the consequentialist point of view, or from the lower school's point of view, or what?
In this last sentence, Geshe-la.
Yes?
In this last sentence.
Yes.
Or the yes.
Without that pot having been brought about, what would the arising, lasting, or destruction be a characteristic of? He's likely saying.
Yes, I would say it's from the lower school's point of view, this one.
Well, he's kind of asking the lower schools. You mean? Well, he is asking them.
Yes, yeah, yes. But
can you explain a bit more, maybe, or not?
No, I can't.
Yeah, so it's like.
But it seems like arising pot has to be existent, like when at the time of arising of the pot has to be already there to have the to have the characteristic of arising, no?
Well, if you hold to inherent existence, then
yes, then then the pot has to have the tree at the time of existence of pot. Like
so
all the three.
If pot inherently exists.
Characteristics at the time of existence of pot.
So pot should exist even at the time of its own arising, if you accept inherent existence, you mean?
Yes.
Now she's disappeared.
No, I'm there.
Oh, you've got your picture on now. Oh, you just start in the darkness against the window.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, because I'm against the window, but there. Yeah.
That's okay. You just moved. Your picture jumped from one place to another. So that's something to be thinking about. Anyway, you know, he's saying pot's got to be there at the time of its own arising. It seems, you know, if you read a paragraph and take the meaning of it. Yeah. Without the pot having been brought about, without the pot being in existence, how would you talk about, you know, what would that arising, lasting, or destruction be a characteristic of? So he's saying if you believe in inherent existence, the thing has to arise by its own power then. But then how could the thing arise by its own power if it didn't even exist? It wouldn't have any power. But you look at the guy who goes into the potter's, you know, workshop with the child, and the child says, "What's happening?" Well, I said, "Well, the pot's arising." You see, so there doesn't have to be a pot there for him to say the pot's arising. All right. So how is he justifying there's a pot there? Well, how is he justifying there's a pot arising? Yeah. If it's not arising by way of its own power, how is it arising? You see? So that's kind of little doubt I had from this first paragraph, which Yair perhaps had with me, you know. But if you think of his Budapalita is talking to these inherently existent guys who say that, you know, everything has to come from the object's own side. So pot has to arise by its own power then. If it inherently exists, it inherently arises by way of its own power. So it's on those lines, you know. So that's one, you know, tricky point. I'm not going to answer it all now, but you know, keep thinking about it, and it's definitely something that's going to come up later. So he's not like talking about them singly, but you know, how could first of all, he's just saying if they're going to act, then they've got to be acted with an existing pot. So this idea of he's talking about each taking them each individually is not so you know, singly or, you know, one by one, isn't really coming out in that paragraph. Anyway, something to think about. Now the next paragraph's also got something to think about. In the present case, destruction is annihilation, non-existence. What it exists on does not exist at all. When that thing does not even exist, what could arising, lasting, and destruction be characteristics of? So in the first place, arising, lasting, and destruction, either singly or in combination, are by no means characteristics of a thing that has not been brought about, nor of one that has been destroyed. Okay, so he's admitting here that he's not on the, you know, the actual key question of the verse, like, are they acting one by one or are they acting all at once? These three characteristics. He's admitting that, right? So if you say either singly or in combination, so he's not really like focusing on the actual, you know, key point of the verse, but what he's saying is still, we have to understand it. So in this case, destruction is annihilation and non-existence. It's like very clear he's talking about the destruction is like the gross impermanence, when the pot ceases to exist. Okay, so now we're talking a pot that's already been destroyed, okay? So when you've got this destruction, you know, the pot is like saying that this pot's destroyed, it's a destroyed pot. It's like saying a dead person, yeah? So a dead person is no longer a person. Yeah, so the person's actually, you know, it's established that they're dead. It's like they're no longer a person. But we'll say dead person, you know, like in ordinary language, we'll say, well, that's a dead person, but we don't mean they're a person. A dead person is not a person. Is a broken pot a pot? It can't perform the function of holding water. No longer a pot, right? But we say it's a broken pot. But we don't mean it's a pot, do we? And that's okay, so there's a dead person there, but we don't mean there's a person there. The mind and body have gone apart. It's just a body. But you know, it makes sense what we're saying, but it doesn't mean a dead person is a person. So a destroyed pot, a pot that's had destruction on it or something, is no longer a pot. So then, okay, if we're talking about something that's already been destroyed, we can't say there's lasting or destruction. We can't say there's arising or lasting there. You know, in terms of that pot, we can't say that pot is arising. We can't say that pot is lasting because it's been destroyed. So that's we can all agree with that, I think. But that's the problem here with this verse, or with this paragraph, is, you know, this characteristic of destruction. And it definitely means destruction. The word in Sanskrit doesn't mean being destroyed. You know, it's like a bit. Sometimes it means one thing, sometimes it means another. Like you know, being destroyed. The destruction of the city by the bombs took a long time. You know, they had to drop a lot of bombs on the city to destroy it. You know, the destruction of the city took a long time. So that's destruction is the process of making something disintegrate. But then if you said, you know, if you looked at it later on, you know, the destruction caused by the bombs was immense, you know, so it's the wreckage, the damage, you know, the actual, you know, what's left after the process of destruction, you know, the destruction by the bombs. So it's more like that's the second one he's talking about here. It's after the things, you know, it's like after the thing ceases to be, the destruction is what's left, and sort of thing. The pot's been destroyed, so then there's nothing to no talking about arising and lasting there. It's not the pot being destroyed, but it's the pot having been destroyed. So that's like when the person's dead. You know? So you have to be careful here. You know, I'm not kind of figured out why but sometimes it seems like this last characteristic is something that the object is going through, process of ceasing. Sometimes it seems like it's talking about, you know, oh well, there's nothing happening because the thing's already ceased. You know, the cessation meaning it ceased. So that's kind of a bit of a tricky question with that paragraph. But it's clear there he's saying, well, if the pot's already been destroyed, we can't talk about arising and lasting, so let's not bother talking about are there any characteristics on something like a pot that's already been destroyed. Okay. But the third possibility is the one that's always the most obvious one, of course. So it might be that these three characteristics will be of something that has been brought about and has not yet been destroyed. Well, of course, you know, that's what we're talking about, the actual thing. I'm trying to anyway. But this is not tenable either. Why? Here, there is no arising of the existing thing called pot, for there is no further arising of an existent to be done. Okay. Yeah, so it's already arisen, so let's not talk about it arising. If you want pot to have the three characteristics, how does pot have the characteristic of arising? Yeah, it's already arisen. Yeah, so he's really posing some tricky questions here. If there were still the arising again of an existent, then there would never not be such, and that is not acceptable. So once you allow, like maybe Tom was trying to sometimes accept last Thursday, that okay, it's arisen, but still it's arising or rising again or something, then you know you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be born from from the mother twice. You know, being born from your mother is not enough. You have to be born again. Therefore, there is no arising of an existent, and since there is not, how could it arising be a characteristic? So he's not talking about lasting or destruction in this paragraph. He's just talking about arising now. He's taking arising, separating it out, and you know, he's trying to cause problems, or trying to sort of, you know, sort of trying to damage the opponent's position or something. He's trying to sort of show them where they're going wrong, let's say, because there is no arising of an existent. If it already exists, it doesn't arise. So Anila, there's no arising of an existent. Do you accept that? Anila?
There is no arising of non-existent. I accept. Oh, sorry. Yeah, yes. No. The mic is on, right? Yes. There is no arising of non-existent.
No,
yes, I accept.
Existent. I'm reading from the paragraph that I've just been reading. If there were still the arising of again of an existent, there would never
of an existent.
Existent, yeah. The last sentence. Therefore, there is no
yes,
arising
yes, an
of an existent.
Yes.
So the last sentence.
Yes.
Therefore, there is no arising of an existent. You accept?
No. Why?
There is no arising of an existent because that is a view. The magnificent master of middle way philosophy, His Lordship Budapalita.
No, that would be that's again from the point of view of accepting inherent existence.
No, it's just reality. That's just everyday conventional truth.
That there is no
arising of an existent because it already exists. The subject pot, it follows, it does not arise.
Why?
Because it's an existent.
No, but it's an existent. If it's existent and if it's impermanent, it has to arise.
We don't need any complicated explanations, thank you.
No, but it's not complicated explanation. It was one sentence.
There's 4 answers, right? Accept. Reason not established, no pervasion. Why?
Okay. Okay. Yes.
The subject part. It follows. It is an existent.
An existent. I accept. It exists, right? Accept. Yeah.
Yeah. So it follows there is no arising of pot.
Why?
Because there is no arising of an existent.
Reason not established.
There is no arising of an existent because that is the pure thought of His Lordship, the master of reason, of Madhyamaka reasoning, Budapalita.
But it's not to be taken literally, it's to interpret.
So there is an arising of an existent.
Accept.
So existence, so once something has arisen, it becomes an existent, like a pot, yeah? Let's say pot, it has arisen, it is an existent, right?
If something has arisen, yes, it's existent,
this
yes.
pot, this pot,
Yes.
it has arisen, it is an existent, accept?
Accept.
Yeah. So it follows there is no arising for this pot.
There is no arising for this pot. There was arising for this pot.
Yeah, you have to answer the question.
There is arising for this pot, but not now.
Explanations. It follows there is no arising for an existent.
Why?
There is arising for an existent.
Accept.
Follows there is arising for an existent.
Accept.
So there is arising for an existent pot.
Accept.
So there is arising for a pot.
Accept.
There is no. So there is arising for my pot.
There is arising for your pot, yes.
There is no arising for my pot because it has already arisen.
No pervasion.
Well, if it's already arisen, it doesn't need to arise. There is no arising because it's already arisen. There is a pervasion. Whatever has arisen does not arise. Does not arise again.
Whatever has arisen does not arise. Not arise, no pervasion. It does arise, but it does not arise. Now it does not arise again, but it does arise. In sense, it's suitable to arise.
Explanation. When we ask for an explanation, you may give an explanation.
And I said no pervasion. I said no pervasion.
Posit your no pervasion. Posit the pervasion.
Now we are asking for explanations.
Posit the pervasion. Posit the pervasion. Say what you're saying no pervasion to.
So if something has already arisen, it doesn't entail that it has no arising.
That's clear enough. That's clear enough. Yeah. The subject part, does it arise?
Yes, it does.
The subject part, is it arising?
No, it is not.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just you have to work out the way that to interpret the words. The words can be interpreted 2 ways sometimes. Is he talking about destruction which is finished or destruction which is going on? So then, as you're answering the debate, you have to be take on which way you think it's best to take it and stick with it. But of course, if the words are ambiguous, then you have no arising for an existent. Does that mean arising in general, or arising after it has come into existence? No, you have to be clear about what's being said there. Yeah. Anyway, it's still this issue. You get it clear that obviously conditioned phenomena has to arise, but it doesn't come into existence until after it has arisen. So that's a bit, you know, that's really kind of a way into the Madhyamaka view in a way. How can it be arising from its own side then? You know, and if it's not arising from its own side, how is it arising? And you know, how do you decide that it's arising? What's the evidence that it's arising? Yeah. So does that mean then that arising is not a characteristic of a conditioned phenomenon? Arising is not a characteristic of pot. See, so that's kind of the claim that Budapalita is making in that paragraph. But you know, it's making me think anyway. I don't know about you. So at the time of no, no more fancy questions. Let's read a bit more. So anyway, arising, you know, it's got its own features. Yeah, it happens before the object exists, you know, and so on and so on. So you know, there's plenty to think about arising, which is specific to arising. Lasting and ceasing, they also have their, whatever you call them, their, you know, special features which require consideration. That one about destruction, does it mean being destroyed or having been destroyed? What are they actually saying at any one time? So these are, you know, each of these three characteristics are going to have their own, you know, sort of needs of special thought. Lasting, maybe that's an easy one to think about. I don't know. So the opponent is saying, okay, he doesn't sort of challenge about arising. He lets that one pass, but he says, yeah, well, okay, but lasting at any rate exists. So Budapalita says to him then, lasting is untenable also. So is he talking about on its own? I think maybe, you know, he's saying here, lasting on its own is untenable. Why? Because it is accompanied by destruction. So again, we have a little bit of a problem with the text here, maybe. You know, the original text, is there something a bit missing? I don't know. So now he's saying arising accompanied by destruction. So that sounds like the destruction which is going on. Something's becoming destroyed, right? So it's still in existence. It's like aging, you know. It's going towards its destruction. So like me, you know, I'm becoming destroyed in the sense I'm getting near to my death all the time. I'm dying. You know, in the, you know, Lamrim text, you say, you know, like dying from the moment you're born. Well, there's kind of, you know, a way to get you to think about impermanence. In a way, it's true. You know, you are approaching your end, near all the time. And you know, in my case, my body is getting weaker all the time. So lasting then, yes, I am lasting. I have lasted, but I am becoming destroyed. I am ceasing at the same time. But Budapalita is saying that's not. How can those two be true of the same phenomenon? So lasting singly on its own then is untenable also. Why? Because it is accompanied by destruction. In this way, the conditioned are always accompanied by impermanence. So if they're always impermanent, how can they last when the two lasting and destruction are contradictory? So that is definitely talking from the lower school's point of view. I mean, it sounds like even for a worldly person, you can ask them, lasting and being destroyed. I mean, are they kind of compatible? And, you know, and in the worldly view, like without thinking too much, you might say, well, no, they're not. Either the thing lasts, either the thing is okay, it abides, or it's being destroyed. You know, can't be both. You know, they would think maybe they are kind of contradictory. But if you think about it in the way I was just talking, I think, you know, somebody from like the Sutra follower school say, you know, they would say those two happening at the same time. The Vaibhasikas, you know, the great expositionists, they're more difficult. You know, they would tend to say, if we remember, that they each happen one after the other. You know, old age weakens the phenomenon, or well, they said old age and lasting, maybe they would be happening at the same time. The phenomenon lasts. So there is duration. But then destruction comes along and finishes it off. But they did talk about old age as well, you see. So there's a factor of weakening and getting more and more useless, even while the phenomena still exists, so even while it's lasting. But if you have lasting from its own side and destruction from its own side, then things are different. Or what? I think you have to think of Budapalita here, thinking about inherently existent lasting and inherently existent ceasing. Personally, we would say those two, are incompatible. But lasting and ceasing that aren't inherently existent could be, non-contradictory. So we look at verse 23 here from the same chapter, but he's bringing a verse in from later on in the chapter. That there is lasting for a thing, that ceasing is untenable. Whatever isn't ceasing, though, it being a thing is untenable. Yeah. So that's pretty concise, good, sort of a verse. It's really got some bite to it. Yeah. Really got some sort of point. That there is lasting for a thing, that ceasing is untenable. Whatever isn't ceasing, though, it being a thing is untenable. So that's from our point of view. That's from the middle way point of view. Yeah. Because if the thing is inherently lasting, it's lasting all by way of its own power. So what does that imply to you? Anything? Finally, if something is lasting by way of its own power, what does that suggest to you?
Did you ask me?
Have you any sort of think any thought about that?
If something lasts inherently, then it can never cease.
That's the idea, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm.
But if it's lasting just by way of its own power, not depending on maintaining good conditions or meeting bad conditions, it lasts inherently, then what would stop it lasting forever? And then if something is ceasing, inherently ceasing, what does that suggest, Anneli? Anneli, are you there?
If something is ceasing inherently,
Inherently, what does that suggest?
I have no idea.
Well, you were okay on lasting.
Yeah, I have no idea what inherent ceasing means. No idea whatsoever.
Well, it ceases by way of its own power alone, without, waiting for any other cause and conditions to make it cease, or without having to be made to cease.
Yeah, I don't know what it means. No idea.
Well, yes. I mean, how would you interpret it? If it ceases inherently, then it should cease as soon as it comes into existence, then, because it just gets on with ceasing and then ceases. So either it just only lasts enough time for it to cease, which would be very quickly, or it just goes on and on and on, ceasing forever. But if it did go on and on ceasing forever, then it never would cease, would it? So then, how would it be ceasing if it just kept on ceasing forever? So inherent ceasing doesn't seem to be very tenable. Just taking it on its own. But you can see how, if inherently existent is the case, then how can lasting and ceasing be going on together at one time? Yeah. Or arising and ceasing, for that matter. Might be clearer if you talked about arising and ceasing. Like some people, can you think of an example where arising and ceasing would be compatible, Roxanne?
Rising and ceasing at the same time?
Yeah. So one object, again, one object cannot be arising and ceasing at the same time. You know, I don't think you could say this book or something, or this pencil is arising and ceasing at the same time, you know. It arises first and then it begins to cease. But if you're looking, you know, at the situation, couldn't you have a situation where the two things, both of those are happening at once?
Something which hasn't a reason cannot cease, right?
Yes.
I don't know any examples when it can happen simultaneously.
Yeah, well, what you have to do is you don't think of the same subject. Yeah, think if you put the bean sprout on the windowsill with a bit of water and a bit of soft cloth. You know, you make the cloth damp, and you get your bean seeds, and you put them onto the wet cloth. Because you want a bean sprout. Yeah, so we can say then, can we say? Somebody can come along and say, oh, look, you know, and after a couple of days or a few hours or something, oh, look, you know, we say the bean sprouts are arising now. There's been a little time for the water to be taken in by the seed and enzymes or whatever they needed, and they doing their work. Then we say, oh, look, the bean sprouts are arising. But somebody else can come along and say, oh, look, the beans are ceasing. They could say that, the bean seeds are ceasing, aren't they? That's one way to look at it. Yeah, just what was the example we had the other night?
The forest and the Amazon. And
yeah, so the Amazon's burning, right? So people like the environmentalists are horrified. Oh, look, you know, the forest is being destroyed. The forest is ceasing. But the farmers who made the fire, they're saying, oh, look, farmland is arising. They're really happy. Yeah, farmland is arising. You see, so one guy looks at it and he says, oh, there, you know, farmland is arising. The other guy says, oh, the forest is ceasing. So what does that mean? Well, it means that nothing is happening from the object's own side then. It's only the way you're looking at it. You decide to interpret it as an act of arising. But somebody else comes along and interprets this as an act of destruction.
So it's the same with pot, right? When somebody sees the pot being made, there's a perspective. Because he has the generic image of a pot, so he thinks the pot is being made, but maybe the pottery baker says, no, the clay is disappearing.
Yeah, the clay is ceasing. You know, you could say that, yeah. Why not? You know, the bean sprouts are ceasing, or the bean seeds are ceasing, the bean sprouts are arising. But how would that appear to your direct perception? Absolutely no difference. Yeah, the direct perception is just seeing the same thing. The same objects on the windowsill and what's happening to them, or the same fire, you know, the same, you know, view of the Amazon kind of area from the aeroplane or something looking down. So the eye consistency is exactly the same thing. But the conception, and one conception is saying, oh, look, you know, the forest is ceasing. And the other conception is, oh, look, the farmland is arising. Oh, the bean seeds are ceasing, the bean sprouts are arising.
That's a question.
So for somebody who's like not hung up about inherent existence, or any worldly person who they may grasp at inherent existence, but it's perfectly correct statements that the worldly people can understand there. There's no problem. It's not against the worldly view. It's just perfectly correct. But if you grasp at inherent existence and say, look to the person who's you know proudly like saying inherent existence is part of my system, then they say, well, you know, how can it be destroying something being destroyed from its own side and something arising from its own side? It's only like according to your interpretation, man.
Can I ask a question?
Well, the bean seeds, they're the ones that are ceasing, and the bean sprouts, they're the ones that are rising. You know, so there's two different things going on because there's two different agents, you know, two different subjects. But what you see from your direct perception is exactly the same. Yeah, so it requires, interpretation to say that's destruction or that's arising. The action that's taking place. Not looking about the subjects or the action that's happening. So it can't be inherently existent arising, it can't be inherently existent ceasing. So this is what these verses are going on about, but they're talking about lasting and ceasing, yeah? So they should be also incompatible if you believe in inherent existence. Yeah, that there is lasting for a thing that's ceasing is untenable. So this is Arya David. No, this is from chapter 23. Arya David next. Yeah. So he's saying they can't be compatible for somebody who believes in inherent existence, because if it's an act of lasting by its own power, then no ceasing would be taking place. It would just be going on and on lasting. But if it's an act of ceasing by its own power, no lasting would be taking place, because it's inherently ceasing, actually just ceasing. You see what I mean? But whatever isn't ceasing, though, it being a thing is untenable. Unless it is ceasing, it's not a functioning thing. So everything that's produced from the moment of production, it is on the way out. It is ceasing. So that's our position. That's our kind of understanding. Whatever isn't ceasing, though, is being a thing is untenable. So if you say there is a functioning thing or a condition phenomena that is temporary, lasting without ceasing, then it won't be a functioning thing, because all functioning things, are pervaded by ceasing all the time.
That's one question.
Okay, so we've got this sort of feeling of subtle impermanence. I hope everything is just passing away. Doesn't mean everything's necessarily becoming worse or destroyed, but everything it is in the first moment is lost in the second moment. And if the second moment is going to be like the first moment, then it has to rise again from a new set of causes and conditions. So even the omniscient consciousness, which is, it's not like getting worse and going to ruin or, going to go to death or anything. But still, there's this process of every moment has to rise out of a new set of causes and conditions. So even for something as consciousness, which, the continuation of its sort of continuum never gets severed. So you have to be able to talk about those things too. Yeah, okay, so that's sort of a taste of, how these things cooperate together then, on the compensable level, how are you going to have arising, lasting, and ceasing? How are you going to arrange them in your mind? How are they going to work? And as soon as you try to do it, you see that, maybe you have to, it calls into question this idea of things inherently existing. So you're going to have to go to something, to a different view. But if they don't exist from their own side, how can they exist? They don't have some sort of reality of their own by way of their own means, then how can we accept the existence of them? Otherwise, are they just all imaginary or something? So these lower school views, they're low school guys. They don't want to believe in a world where everything is just what you imagine it is. That to them is like nihilism. So what's this consequentialist Madhyamik view got going for it? It's just so radical that it can't describe the world at all. They just want us to say, well, everything that we imagine has to be real. Because everything that exists is just imagined, doesn't it? So the lower schools aren't kind of just being obstinate. They're not just being so stupid. They've got they want things to have some grounding in some sort of solid reality. You see, so they're they've got their case, their view is sort of based on that. Okay, well, we've got time for another meditation, maybe. So this one is, maybe we could go to the discussion point document. So
Jason had a question. It's in the, he was shaking his hand.
You've got a question, Jason?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you want to move on to another topic. It was just,
well, we've only got half an hour left, yeah, so we only got a bit of meditation in.
yeah, it's all right. I can ask it another time.
So there's a document called Discussion Points, Saturday the 19th of September. Can you open that one? So this is related number 4. number 4, point number 4, blue number 4 down there is lasting and ceasing. So this follows up from what we've just been talking about. Don't ignore the first 3. We've more or less sort of talked about those already, but keep discussing them in your own time. Number 4, lasting and ceasing, the cherry tree in the park. Okay, got it? Okay, Zoltan? You got it? Lasting and ceasing. So with all this talk of impermanence, now we're getting the idea, oh, everything's just broken up into tiny moments, and everything that's there in the first moment disappears in the second moment, and the second moment arises out of its own cause and conditions, you know, and if you're lucky, it looks like the first moment, but if there's some radical change going on, it won't even look like that, what was there in the first moment. It'll look completely different, you know, but whether it looks the same or looks different in the next moment, it's all change. So it's all, you know, momentary. There's no stability at all. So then, lasting and ceasing, the cherry tree in the park. In the winter, bare branches. In the spring, light green leaves and white flowers. In the summer, dark green leaves and fruit. So the tree of the winter is not there in the summer. The tree of the spring is not there in the summer. You know, so the tree of the last season, the tree of winter is not there in the spring, better to say. And the tree of spring is not there in the summer. But the cherry tree in the park, that is there in the winter, in the spring, and the summer. So, is there a permanent, unchanging element here within this tree then? So, if you just accept impermanence all over the place, you know, but then, well, but things do last, you know. So there is a cherry tree in the park in the spring, and you go by there in the park in the summer, and still, oh, that's the cherry tree in the park. And then you go by in the winter, oh, the children are playing under the cherry tree in the park, aren't they having a happy time, you know? So every time you walk past, you can just think, oh, the cherry tree in the park is this, that, and the other. You know, so you're accepting there's a cherry tree in the park in the winter, the summer, and the spring. So is there a permanent element there? What do you think, Katya?
You ask me?
Hi.
Yeah, sorry.
So we have, you know, a tree with white flowers and green leaves in the spring, with fruit in the summer, cherry fruit or something, and then the winter we have just bare branches. But isn't there something permanent that's there all the time? Isn't there a permanent element to this tree? What do you think?
I think it has to do with the mind that sees those things. The way we label the park, this is the park, this is a tree, we are dividing those.
So the cherry tree in the park is not permanent.
On the visual level, it looks permanent.
Well, yes, but there are a lot of changes, you know. But we understand that, yeah. So the winter looks bare. In the spring, it has nice little green leaves and flowers. In the summer, big leaves. And so we accept that the appearance is changing. But because the cherry tree is there in the spring and in the summer and in the autumn and so forth, surely we should say that the cherry tree is permanent in the sense of unchanging. The cherry tree itself.
Yeah, but if you think that the territory consists of all those parts, then is it unchanging?
Well, the cherry tree in the spring passes away, so that changes, that leaves, you know, that becomes destroyed. The cherry tree in the summer arises and that passes away. You know.
Yeah, but if you ask what is territory, if you try to define what is it the territory made out of trees and other things that changes?
The territory,
Yes,
Cherry tree.
the cherry tree.
the area where the trees are, the park.
Park.
Three.
Well, the territory is made up of parts, yes, that's, I accept that. The area.
It depends on how you see the territory. If you see it as just a concept, then maybe yeah. But if you try to analyze it and see it as a part, that like those trees that are changing, the grass and all those things, then it becomes more difficult to reply immediately.
Yeah. I think your first reply was something to the point though, where you're saying it's, you know, it's like what you're labeling, isn't it? It's what you're
Yeah.
giving a name to it.
Yeah.
Any comment, Yael, please?
Yeah.
Any comment?
Yeah, we talked about it that just like the case of the pot changing momentarily, but still looks the same. We call it a continuum of a similar type. So even though it keeps some kind of its continuum, even though there are many changes. So in the pot, the subtle changes do not manifest. In the tree, they manifest more, but it's still a continuum of the tree. So we can still conceptually say it's the same tree, even though there are many changes manifesting during the seasons.
So is the cherry tree in the park, is it permanent in the sense of unchanging or not?
No.
But then it has to have an essence which is unchanging. The essence of the cherry tree is unchanging. The outside is changing. You know, we all recognize that, whether you're in Sweden or in France. But inside there's an essence, permanent, unchanging.
Science propaganda.
The essence must be some kind of concept then.
Well, we want something from the, yeah, even the essence is a concept.
The essence of the park, I mean, in this case.
The essence of the park, essence of the tree.
Yeah.
So what do we have to say? The tree is just, the cherry tree is just, how are you going to describe it, you know? It's just put there by your mind.
Something like that, yeah. For sure.
Yes, thank you for your help, Katya and Yael. Yes, good. It's difficult to think about, but this is a way into emptiness now. You know, if you see, or if you're prepared to accept that in every moment the tree is different, you know, so it is changing all the time, but still, you have to be able to say there's a tree that lasts. Through all those changes, there is a tree that lasts. So then the tree that lasts is kind of what just put there by your mind, is it then? It sees the different moments, and even though there are some superficial differences of leaves or no leaves, or fruits or no fruits, flowers or no flowers, but still there is something that all those appearances have in common. You know, there's some common feature of still being, you know, just instances of the same tree, you know, living in the same place, in the same park. But in the end, the tree, when we say the cherry tree, you know, the general one that's there throughout the years, then that's just being posited there by a mind, is it?
It's not like people sometimes they write their initials on the trees, you know, when they are young, and maybe 20 years after they can see, oh, then at this time I wrote something on the tree. So if it's only posited by the mind, then it will not be here if they don't remember that.
But Jimber is talking about people writing initials on the tree. If they carve initials with their knife, you know, when they're young, you know, they carve their initial on the tree, but then 20 years later they come back again, and those initials are still there. You know, they're sort of grown a bit, you know, differently, but you can still recognize those letters on the tree. But if everything, you know, if they don't remember the initials on the tree, why wouldn't the initials just disappear? You know, why should they still be there 20 years later if it's just something that you've, you know, just, you know, something that's no more than just your conceptual projection or something. Yeah, but if you want to insist on constant change, which is the Buddhist way of doing it, and you know, it seems very much in accordance with reality. You know, when you do a bit of reasoning about, you know, subtle impermanence and so forth. I mean, outside schools may not agree, but you know, there seems to be a good case, especially supported by scientists, that anything that's made of matter, or, you know, no less mind, that process of constant change is going on. But then, how do you establish continuity? And that's how the Buddhists get criticized by these outsider non-Buddhist schools. I think, you know, they say, you're so keen on this subtle impermanence, but what is there to join all the moments up? What is there to make continuity? You've broken everything up into the moments. But how do you join the moments together? What glues them together? And so, well, everything's merely imputed by mind. You know, the tree that pervades over all those moments, or the person who pervades all over the moments of his life, they're just imputed. So that's difficult for these outsiders to accept. That's emptiness. Yeah, so we're going to play about this one with continuum of moments. So that's appropriate at this point if we've just been talking about subtle impermanence. So we have, you know, the question of whole and parts, you know, the body and the parts of the body. You know, the question of, you know, generality and the fruit, like the fruits. Generality is just imputed. It depends on the instances, banana and orange and so forth. They all have something in common. So banana, orange, and apple, oh, they're all fruit. Yeah. So we have generality, you know, being imputed in dependence upon instances. But also you can have this continuum then, you know, this you know, sort of series stretching through time, being imputed depends upon its moments, and that's worth thinking about them. So maybe we should meditate a bit now, 20 minutes, without trying to go into more, you know, investigation, but just trying to get some appearance to our mind of these things. So just to finish off with, just to bring it home to our actual experience, not just sort of thinking about it intellectually. So let's try to move them from thinking about impermanence to actually thinking a bit about emptiness. So we thought about subtle impermanence a bit this morning, so we can revive those thoughts, and then once we've got that sort of feeling established there, maybe we can just see how that leads to emptiness as well. So if you go back to the beginning, you know, if you really, I think if you're doing a meditation on subtle impermanences, trying to get down to the subtle momentary change, using the example of the butter lamp, it's still also quite good to start with sort of gross impermanence. You know, thinking my life is very short, and many conditions coming together which will kind of end my life very quickly, and how my body is very fragile anyway. So it's always good to start off meditating on gross impermanence, actually, maybe of yourself, just in the traditional Lamrim way, death and impermanence type of meditation. It's a good way to start. So definitely change is always in the air. We're always moving to new states, and the unfolding of our lives cannot continue for very long. And the gross change, die, pass away, be born again, new body. That's the flow of things. But if you investigate a little deeper, then we can talk about this flow going on even at a very subtle level, at the tiniest moment. Nothing ever stays the same. One way to approach that is to say that yes, so everything arises from cause and conditions, just like the last month of the butter lamp though. The substantial cause, you know, the producing cause of the flame is the fuel. So the fuel has to be destroyed in order for the flame to arise. The arising of the flame is the ceasing of the fuel. But then it is the last mode of the butter lamp, it immediately goes out. So that means that that's telling you, so why does it go out? Well, if there's no more fuel, there's no more flame. Everybody knows that. So in order to arise, it has to use up its cause. But then as soon as there's no more of the causal fuel, then the flame has to go out. So just an infinitesimally short kind of passing away, something's produced and it just passes away. Maybe another moment arises similar to the last one. Maybe, but that's arising from a new set of cause and conditions. So the process of change is just, no matter how, to what sort of shorter level of moment you go to, that process of change is just ongoing. So we rise, we last, and we pass away. So that every moment, that process is going on in our bodies and our minds, the world we live in. On the other hand, though, we can know somebody, if we're old enough, probably most of us are, that we met that person when they were, say, when they were a teenager. So, you know, the shape of their face and the type of body they have is like, you know, more or less becoming established at that time. And we meet them 10, 20 years later. So then at that time they are, you know, they may be parent or something like that. This lady they might have children of their own. So they're no longer the sort of a slim young person we met. They're looking after their own children. Maybe living in a different city, different country. We recognize them. Oh, you know, we said that's my friend Susan. And even sometime after that, you know, another 10 years, another 15 years can go past. So now the lady's living in another place, doing a different job. Children have grown up, or children are old enough to. She's got a job and on a completely different situation, different city. But still, we recognize that person, Susan. So if you ask them, where is Susan? And where is Susan amongst those different instances, those different manifestations of Susan? One as a young teenager, one as somebody who's in their 20s or something, you know, sort of young children. And one later on when they are middle-aged, starting on middle age. So where is Susan amongst those instances? So like we're looking for the whole amongst the parts. It's like that, isn't it? Where is the person amongst the aggregates? It's that kind of search, but it's like a different different slant on it. It's the whole considered in comparison with the moments that make up that whole. So where do you find the hour amongst the minutes? So you've got 60 minutes, so where's the hour? The first moment doesn't qualify as an hour. Very, very short. Yeah. The second moment of the second minute of the hour, that's not an hour. That's just part of an hour. The third moment is the same. It's very short. An hour is, you know, much longer than that. But is this something separate, you know, from the minutes? The hours are not separate from the minutes. This is, you know, the whole Susan, the Susan who pervades over all the moments of her life. Is she somehow a different Susan, sort of separate substance from the instances of Susan that we've met? No way. There's no sort of separate Susan, separate from her instances, from her manifestations at different stages of her life. There's no other substance of Susan hidden away somewhere. All you've got is those moments. So no Susan to be found amongst the past or separate from the past. No hour to be found, you know, sort of when you hold up the minutes, the hour is somehow not there, but it's not separate from the minutes. There's some other piece of time that's separate from the minutes. Yeah, so it's very like the parts of the person and the person themselves. Parts and the whole. It's that kind of debate, that kind of puzzle that you have to think about. We have that example of the person being like the tennis team. You know, the doubles tennis team. Just two people in the team in this tennis. Two people in a doubles tennis team. So let's say the team is your mind and your body. Yeah? So that your mind and your body are playing in one tennis team against another team on the other side of the net. So there's you, your mind and your body. That's your tennis team. So then somebody says, "Oh, well, where's the team then?" It's like saying, "Where's the person?" Amongst the mind and the body, where's the person? So somebody says, "Where's the team then?" There's your mind and the body. Where's the team that those mind and body belong to? Can't point to anything, can you, except for the mind and the body? No team apart from the mind and the body. Yeah? It's just the two players in the team, and that's the team. So team is just like it's like you're sort of composing the mind and body into. You're composing the two players of the team into a team. Two separate players with different lives, but then they're a team. You're just putting them together as a team, just mentally conceiving them that way, and everybody else sees them the same way. They're that team, the doubles team. So the team is purely like a mental, contribution. And all you've got in reality is just two players, right? Is it like that? Yeah. So you've got Susan, but you're just, you're just constructing the three or the four, or the many examples of Susan who's different. Every time you see her, actually, she's something different and changed. She's eaten different food. Her body's repaired itself. She's gone through so many transformations. Got older. Her hair turns from, black to grey or something. A smooth skin turns sort of more wrinkled skin, and all those things. But still, we feel like there's a contribution from the mind saying, that's Susan. Every time you see her, that's Susan. But it's just like the team, the tennis team is saying, your mental kind of gathering. You're positing Susan in dependence upon those different members of the set of Susan, gathering them, or you're making a set. You're making them all come into the same category. So your Susan then is just some very imputed thing, isn't it? It's the same with you too. Huh? So then, yes, you can really, let go of the idea of inherent existence. You must soak your mind in these antidote ways of thinking, so that this real kind of ignorance that gives you all the grief, nothing it's grasping at, inherent existence, just has to recede from your mind. You can just dissolve your mind into the absence of that. Nothing has any power to exist by way of its own side whatsoever. And the sooner you're rid of that bad notion, the better, because that drives all your afflictions. So yes, I just arise, last, and pass away. So the idea that there's a me there all the time, all throughout my life, is just to, just sort of a convenience that your mind is kind of shaping up, configuring. Just like the tennis team. It's a team there, but I want to meet the team. Well, all you're going to do is meet the players. That's all there is. The team bit is just your contribution. Your mind is thinking, oh, that's a team. Where is the hour amongst the minutes? So it looks like we'll have to stop there now. Time is over. So just do a little dedication, a couple of verses in Tibetan. So we send out all our good energy. We want to become enlightened, nothing less than complete for Buddhahood. And we want to do it in order to be more useful, better able to help, completely connected, so you can really be dedicated to welfare of others, supreme ability. So that's try to direct the good energy we've created towards the best of ends, then the best of aspirations. Kewadi nyoduna lama sangye drogyone Owa Chika Malo, Koki Sala Kapasho, Chanchu Samcho Remote, Markia Panam Keguchi, Kapanyam Pametaya, Ome Gondo, Awashos, Odi Chita Precious Man. Where not born may it become, where born may it not become, only increase more and more. Thanks very much, Dan. Thanks for your concentration.